what we're going to do now is we're just going to have a bit of a chat with Eddie and talk about some of the processes. So this project, as David said, it's been funded by our intercultural worshipping communities. And we're very pleased to welcome some people from the diocese here. We have Sophie, who is the Director of Racial Equity with us today. We have Alistair, who's Project Manager with the IWC. We also have some people from the university, Loughborough University, who are looking at a really interesting art project around medieval wall paintings. You might want to speak to them later as well. Anyway, so Eddie, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's fabulous to see Martha in the church in All Saints at last, our first saint. I wonder if you would just talk a little bit, first of all, about the processes. So you'd said that you don't want to talk too much about the symbolism. You don't want to explain the painting too much. You want us to get our own thing from it. But please tell us about maybe the artistic process and the spiritual process for you in this painting.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, church. I don't know where to start, but I'm just going to wing it. When the project started, I did come here for a workshop with the congregation, and that was really good starting point. And I think I went back prayerfully thinking about Martha. One of the interesting things I like about projects like these, it helps you build your spiritual understanding about whoever it is that you've been asked to paint or whatever it is or topic. So I went digging deep into the Gospels to look into who Martha was again. You know, sometimes when you read through the Bible, you forget, and then you come back again and refresh your memory. And I was quite amazed at the similarities between Martha and so many Marthas around me that I know, which I'll speak of. And I really went into the process of trying to find ways in which I can depict Martha as we talked about her during the workshop, the mood board, and then my own personal experience of the Marthas around me. So there was lots of sketching, lots of going away by myself to think, lots of time spent at home asking my 15-year-old questions, asking kids around me how they felt about Martha, and even adults as well. And it took me a while to actually decide, okay, this is what I want to do, and this is how I'm going to go about it. But without going into too much detail, some of you would have seen on social media that I posted a short video of me actually starting the process. So it starts with the sketch. After deciding the sketch, you put it on, and then you put a background color, and then it just takes off from there. So yeah, let me not talk too much about that.
No, that's fine. That's great. Thank you very much. So obviously, now Eddie is working, he has two jobs basically, don't you? So working as an artist is sometimes not enough to live off. So you also have a very busy full-time job as well, working for
Citizens UK as a senior project manager.
Yeah. So this must have been quite a challenge, working full-time, having a family. So I remember you said that sometimes you get into a creative frenzy with your painting, which sounds absolutely marvelous. But tell me about some of the highlights and the lowlights of the last however many months you've been painting.
How long have we got? No, I'm joking. Actually, yes, like you said, it was a challenge, but you know when you're doing something you love, you'll make time, you'll find time. What I decided to do, because my day job is always very, very busy, I spend most of the evenings scoping what I'm going to do on the weekend. So most of this work was done on a Saturday and a Sunday and some evenings. And there were times when you have that epiphany and you're oh yes, I need to put this down. But there were lots of notes. So aside from the sketches, I was putting down a lot of notes, reminding myself that this is what I need to focus on, from colors to symbols to thought processes I had and ideas, and there were many. But a whole part of it is how to juggle and balance what needs to be there and what doesn't have to be there, and then what needs to be there to portray the whole rather than the parts. So you got bits of Martha, bits of us, bits of Loughborough, and then bits of everything that you can think of when it comes to like the key areas of hospitality, servitude, faith, and things like that Martha represented. So that's how I juggled it.
Yeah. One last question. How do you feel about leaving her here with us? Are you very attached to her?
I'm gutted, but at the same time, this is what I've been asked to do and paid for. It's heart-wrenching, but it's like also leaving a piece of you. So I don't know if you know this, but I've got like another project I did last year with another church in Birmingham, where I did a series of 13 Stations of the Cross paintings. So most Sundays I go back there and worship with them. Yeah. So,
we will see you again then.
It's like an hour away, but I might brave it and then come again. And then certainly I will come again to have a look and see if I need to like varnish this in the next 6 months. Definitely. So, yeah, goodbye, Martha. But yeah, I will come back.
Thank you very much. We're very pleased that you're leaving Martha and a bit of yourself with us. But this is just the first of 4, so we will definitely be seeing you again. Thank you so much, Eddie.
Thank you, Kate.
I've just seen that for the first time, okay, and it's very exciting for me. May I thank you for the honour of coming to preach here at All Saints today. I can't tell you how much that means to me just today. And your We Are All Saints project has taken one big step this morning, moving along beautifully today. And I wanted to remind you of 3 parts of the story that has brought us to today and the chance to engage with this work of art for the first time. First of all, you're a community that has looked to express its vision of being disciples of Jesus, of following Jesus in the world of 2025. And your beautiful old stained glass has got you wondering, could we refuel and refill and refresh this church building with some imagery that is so much for today? So this has all happened already. You got a grant, you agreed some action, you got stuck in, you talked about it, you found an artist. What an artist. You found an artist, you made stuff happen, and here today we are looking at the first of your beautiful new artworks for your church. Then, second, you've considered who from the ancient and from the modern splendours of the Christian community, who would help us in our worship and discipleship if we looked at their lives, at their spirituality, if we looked at them week after week as we come into this space to worship? Who should we choose? And I know a bit of the processes that have led you to just this point. I really think it's wonderful. Congratulate you, because you have chosen 3 provocative disciples. You have chosen some radical Jesus-following ways of looking at being all saints into the future. And I think that what starts today with this picture and what follows with other works of art over the coming months, I think that that will influence your worship life here in this place for years to come. It's called Saint Martha of Bethany, a holy welcome. And the others to come, Saint Augustine of Hippo, and a narrative that some of you know and others of you will know better in the coming months, the narrative of Bahram of Tehran. And a 4th picture, which is a mirror picture in some ways, a hard to be pinned down but resonant image of a saint who could be you. We'll come back to that. You're not feeling like saints maybe, but we'll come back to that. We are all saints. A mirror image that might help you to look into it and say, these are some of the ways that I will follow Jesus myself. And as you've done that, as you've in that second phase of the project, as you've thought about who should we picture here, then you have said together afresh, what does it mean to follow Jesus as a community here in Loughborough in 2025? I like to think of the Holy Spirit of God as a spirit of excitement. And I honestly think that these 4 choices that you've made for your works of art, they're offering some spiritual excitement. And I think that's going to flow. The third thing that you've done, and I'm so honoured to be a little part of that myself, is that you have used this as a chance to reach out into your local communities here. I know about the schools bit of that and the creativity and spirituality of children from round here. It is going to flow through the doors, down the aisles, into the life of this Christian community in the coming months. I can really only hint at that this morning, but we already have keen, enthusiastic, talented, spiritually focused 10-year-olds, lots of them, who have been making some spiritual art about inspiring people. And they're going to share that here with you later in the year. I've seen just the beginnings of that. It's amazing. It's lovely. And I'm an outsider, insider here today, but can I, without being patronising, say that I want to congratulate you, All Saints, for what you've done there, because it's marvellous. I don't think it would be extreme to say the pleasure of God is visible in what is happening here, and I love that. We read a few minutes ago from the prophet Malachi, who wrote 24 centuries ago and foresaw a time, I think it came true in his own life, but I think it's coming true again today. He foresaw a time when he says God will be desired by the people, and then God will appear. And the desire of your community that God should be apparent here is finding expression in this art project. So I want to draw your attention to that and to say, as an insider-outsider who's part of your project, it's a bit of a thrill to watch that happening. Now, when you first saw the picture, when you first saw Martha this morning, I wonder, what did you think? Like Eddie, I take my cue from Eddie here. I'm not going to tell you what I think about it. Your conversation with that picture is going to last a long time, and it's going to be a fruitful, fresh, deep conversation. But the sketches and drafts that I've seen from Eddie over the last couple of months have been looking forward to this unveiling, and I've been thinking alongside that about St. Martha of Bethany from the Scriptures. And I want you to notice with me that St. Martha shows us the beauty of the small. I was trying to think of a local comparison for Bethany, and I sort of thought, is Bethany to Jerusalem what Haven is to Loughborough? And I'm sorry, but I think actually Bethany is neither as posh nor as large as Haven. But there it is, a small village. And Mary and Martha, the 2 sisters who live there, are small bit part players in the biblical narrative in some ways. Martha appears in only 2 scenes of the Gospels. But in her friendship with Jesus, the greatness of the small is made visible. Do you know this? That there are only 2 women in the Bible of whom it is said Jesus loved them. And it's these 2, Martha and Mary. Jesus loved them. Children, if you're looking at the picture yourselves this morning, I'm not going to get you to shout out here. Actually, any adult can do this as well. A good way to start analysing a picture is sometimes to think, how much paint did he actually use from particular paint pots? So just take a look there again, if you're 5 or if you're 65 like me. Just take a look again. What colours mostly are on the Martha painting? I'm seeing lots of green. And then I'm seeing golden and yellow and gold together, the colours of light. Wonder if you agree with me. Tell me later if you think I've got that wrong. But notice at least the symbolism of the colour. Oh, there's so much more to unpack. But we have green for growth and gold for holy joy. We have green for life and gold for happiness. We have green for God's creation and gold for the feeling of being welcomed home by the love of God. And the incident that we've read from the Gospel this morning, where Martha asks Jesus, can I get a bit of help here in the kitchen? Can you give me a bit of support here? Actually, that incident has sometimes been read wrongly, in my opinion, as dismissive of the importance of women's work. But I think the opposite is what St. Luke's Gospel shows us. Martha ran a household for her sister and brother. Oh, and I think that's a family. There's nobody in there who seems to have been married, but that looks like a holy family to me. And despite that, she ran that household for her brother and sister, but she made it an open house. The welcome mat says, all are welcome. And it was like a home base for Jesus, just outside of Jerusalem, and he was relaxed there. He seems to have turned up a number of times with a dozen hungry friends, and Martha's habit was to make them welcome. I think she fed a hell of a lot of people in this house that you see here. In the Gospels of Luke and John, Jesus engages with Martha in conversation in profound ways, in challenging ways. I love the already welcome mat on Eddie's painting, and I reckon that this homemade space for everyone at its dining table, I think that when we sang together so movingly this morning, we could have been describing Martha's way of following Jesus. Here, the outcast and the stranger bear the image of God's face. Let's bring an end to fear and danger. All are welcome in this place. And Martha talks to Jesus about God and about getting food on the table. It's about theology and spirituality, and it's about sitting around the table together to enjoy a meal. And have you noticed this? That this is at the end of Jesus' life, that he stays at Martha's house for those last days leading up to his crucifixion. I'm guessing that Martha made the last bed that Jesus slept in before he died. As well as being a great sister, Martha is also a wonderful public witness. We didn't read the other bit of Martha's story from St. John's Gospel, but do check it out from John chapter 11 yourself. Earlier on in the Gospel narrative, Peter has said of Jesus, "You're the Christ, you're the Messiah, you're the Son of God." But he did that in private. The first person ever in the Christian Gospel to name Jesus like that, to publicly name him the Christ, the Messiah, the Son of God, is Martha. And she does that in her conversations with Jesus around the sad tragedy of her brother Lazarus' death. After that tragic death, she makes this incredible statement of faith. I know that my brother will rise again at the resurrection on the last day. But even as she says it, she's full of grief. And she was the friend who cried with Jesus. John chapter 11, verse 35 is famous to some people because it's the shortest verse in the Bible. 2 words, Jesus wept. Martha was crying and Jesus cried with her. And I always think that those tears are a sign of Jesus' humanity and of Jesus and Martha crying together just for the love of Lazarus and for the whole human race who face death, all of us, and for Jesus' own death, so soon to follow. Jesus wept with Martha. And then Martha was witness, of course, to the most amazing miracle. Lots of Bibles give a subheading to John chapter 11. It says, the raising of Lazarus. And clearly Jesus bringing his friend alive again is a very big deal. But only 7 verses of that long chapter occur at the graveside where Lazarus was buried. Most of what leads up to the astonishing miracle is this. It's Jesus and Martha having a long conversation. And again, her practicality shines out beside her faith. As she warns Jesus, he says, open the grave. She says, this body has been laying 4 days dead. There will be a smell. Then she saw the glory of God in the resurrection of her brother for herself. So, Mary and Martha, service and learning. In the exchange that we've read today, Martha needs some help with the catering, and she makes her house open to Jesus and the 12 hungry blokes he carries around with him and commends her need to Jesus. And Jesus commends Mary, the listener, and sometimes, as we've said, Christians have read this part of Martha's narrative in different ways. But if you were to read some feminist Bible commentaries from today, then they draw attention to Luke's description of Martha as a deacon, the first person in Scripture to be described like that. Those male deacons who came along in Acts later on, they were just copying. And Martha's dialogue with Jesus is a very subtle reflection on Jesus' affirmation of women as his disciples in the Gospels. Read it again. It's so interesting. Mary is largely silent in that dialogue. It's Martha, who is the rabbi's disciple, who raises a question here, launches a discussion there, engages with Jesus' ideas, challenges what is going on in her own right. And as you sit with this painting and the symbolism of it and every little detail grows on you, then I hope that will take you back to Luke chapter 10 and to Martha, the disciple, Martha, the deacon. To finish, a word about the language of saints. Sometimes we talk about patron saints, don't we? And I'll just offer you a twist on that this morning. I think that can sound a bit male dominant. So what about Martha as the matron saint? Some saints get attached to various different parts of human life. How about Saint Martha as the matron saint of the home thrown open to hungry people? Martha as the matron saint of a loaded table. Martha as the matron saint of people who are weeping with Jesus because death has come close to us. Martha, the matron saint of a holy welcome. Now, some people think that when you get to this point in the sermon, if you're the preacher, what you ought to do is tell everybody what you're supposed to do next about all that. And I don't really fancy that idea very much, so I'm not doing that. But instead, here are some invitations that I think just emerge from the art and from the scripture and from you, the community that has created this, what is beginning, what is happening today. Invitations. I think we're all invited this morning to wonder about how our own discipleship, our following of Jesus, might be like Martha's. Invitation number one. I think we're invited to notice the simple pleasures of eating together. That's a very nice invitation to receive. I think the picture is structured to invite us to an open door. Share your life with Jesus, like Martha did. I think we're invited, like Martha, to ask Jesus the questions that we really care about. Ask Jesus, what would you need to ask? And I think we're invited, when we need to cry holy tears. I think your project is really well named. We are all saints. Martha, she was just a bit part player in the gospel, but she's a saint, called to follow like us. And the children in the local schools who are involved in your project as well, they can be saints too, when they take a step in the way of Jesus. And I believe this, that God is showing the churches today that being saints is nothing at all to do with being perfect in this life, with being perfect models for everyone else to admire at a distance. No, being a saint is everything to do with the fact that God asks us, invites us to follow by taking one more step after Jesus, by trusting in his grace to enable us all to do this together, to join in and to be among the people who bring in the kingdom of peace and love and hope. So I'm so grateful for the story of Martha from the scriptures. I'm so grateful to Eddie for the astonishing freshness of the expression of these biblical narratives in this piece of work. I'm grateful to all of you, because strange as it may seem, by the generosity of God, we are all saints. Amen.